everybody, and welcome. You got Larson and Zach here from Gondola, and we are kicking off a new interview series where we're meeting with a lot of different sales professionals in the industry and just having a good conversation with them, trying to take out some best practices from what they've learned throughout their career. And our first guest is Matt Morrison from Sin7. Matt, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Larson. Doing great, Zach. Excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, I know we have a pretty lengthy, kind of topics to talk about here today, but the key thesis of what we're talking about is, you've been in AE for a long time. You recently transitioned into a management role. So we want to talk all about what are some of the key learnings from becoming a first-time manager and some of the things that you've learned along the way here. But before we get into that, if you wouldn't mind, Matt, give us a little bit of background on yourself, where you've been, and what you're working on today.
Awesome. Great questions. And as I said, excited to be here. And a little background on myself, right? I got into SaaS about 7 years ago as an individual contributor, right? I was in a B2B sales role prior to that. But in terms of relevant experience that got me to where I am now, kind of cut my teeth at a company called Bird Eye. So a SaaS company that sold marketing and lead generation type software. Fast forward a couple of years, stayed in that space for, I think, about 4 years. Transcended into a slightly different role. So I came to a company called Sin7. So we're an inventory management solution, a light ERP, very much in SaaS, highly complex product, a bit different than the space that I'd been in previously, which was a bit more transactional, a bit less consultative in nature. And the role that I moved into at Sin7 challenged me to be highly consultative, slightly longer sales cycle. Product complexity was ratcheted up. Did that for about a year. So at Sin7, as an individual contributor, I was promoted into a management role. So this was August of 2021. So that's where I've been residing for the better part of 14 months, give or take. Little more background there is Sin7 is owned by Rubicon Partners. So Rubicon's a portfolio management company that merged a few other inventory platforms into the Sin7 realm. So I oversee two of those products, Sin7 being one, another one being Deer Systems. So two completely separate products, but comes with its set of fun challenges to where we're managing products that are shorter and longer sales cycle, but kind of making sense of all that. And that's been, I'd say, the talking point and areas of emphasis for the past 6 months for myself and my leadership team.
Nice. That's awesome. That's really exciting. And it sounds like a really interesting combination of a lot of the different types of sales cycles that you've been a part of in the past, but certainly has the complexity of two, seems like different sales cycles as you're coaching and training and getting people up to speed and helping to manage and kind of hit some of those goals here. So I'm sure you could probably talk our ear off on key learnings, and we could have a whole 20 minutes, 2-hour special on how this works. But I want to distill it down to 3 key points today. What are the 3 things that you've learned most? Maybe take me through that a little bit as you kind of been working on the management role over the past, a year or so. What have been some of the biggest key learnings that you've kind of uncovered?
This is an excellent question and one that I'm happy to share on. Number one that I'd say resonates with me the strongest, and it was shared to me by sales leaders that have been doing this way longer, that have a ton of experience and have found success through trial and error. Number one, every employee has different motivational factors and drives. So from the communication level and how tasks are articulated down to career aspirations, financial security, or simply making money, every rep has different driving factors. Figuring that out sooner can influence a lot and can tell you a lot about who you're managing and as a person, and really what types of buttons and levers, buttons to push, levers to pull to maximize output for your reps. Skill sets are another area, right? You might have some reps that are at a 2, some that are at a 5, and really moving a 2 into a 4 or moving a 4 into a 5, how to spend your time and really maximize your own output. That's really going to be the most advantageous to your brand, to the team you're managing, and really set the tone for the rest of the team through some thoughtful approaches into coaching, mentoring, and when you get down to it, managing, because there are distinct areas, I'd say, are distinct lines that can separate what makes a great coach, what makes a great manager, and I'd say that's a distinguishing factor, is really understanding your employees and what will motivate them.
Kind of a unique point there, right? I mean, as an individual contributor, we're always taught to discover our opportunities, figure out the drivers of our prospects. But, in reality, I think that's one of the best skills that kind of pushes over into management is you have to discover your reps, discover their drivers, discover how to kind of coach and motivate each one of them. It's one thing that I definitely struggle with as a newer manager too, is how do you identify that? When you go into your one-on-ones, how often do you touch base with your reps? How do you communicate and make sure that they're driving towards their personal goals? When you're looking at that, though, I mean, how did you kind of get the lay of the land with your reps? Did you get that during like one-on-ones? Were you asking that, pretty bluntly at the beginning of the conversation, or is it something that you developed that relationship with them over time?
Yeah, really good question, Zach. And you are right about the selling piece, that you're always selling. It could be in a professional environment. It could be, hey, I'm trying to pitch to my wife where I want to have dinner tonight. I know I want this, but she wants that, or we come to no decision, right? Which is a salesperson's biggest enemy at times, is no decision. So to answer your question, I did have a bit of a benefit from being peers with a few individuals, getting promoted, built some rapport over time. So I had the understanding that, like, hey, we know each other on a personal level. I know really what their aspirations look like, and even personally what they're seeking. However, for newer hires, what worked well for me was on the front end, setting expectations, right? That my personal philosophy is that I'm a servant leader, right? Like, I'm here to help the team. Yes, you are here to help the business, but I'm you first, and getting you into a position where you feel the best about yourself and that you are constantly evolving into the best version of yourself. I think setting that tone helped me peel back some layers, that I'm not an adversary, that I'm here to be a mentor and really coach and develop. And that allows me to maybe break down some barriers that, yeah, on the front end, I find it helpful. That's verbiage that I use selling. It's verbiage that I use in managing, that I found it helpful to be, and to fill in the blank. Hey, Mr. Prospect, we have found it helpful in the past to understand business at the foundational level before we move on to a demo into the complex and intricate areas of our platform. The same could be said about a rep, that, right? Like, everyone has slightly different motivations, and it's helpful for me as a manager, and I think us to have a manager and AE relationship to understand each other, and really make this a cohesive relationship that's going to make our time together well spent, and one that benefits not just you, but the entire business. And those types of, I guess, statements, when articulated well, I think a person that wants the best for themselves and wants to succeed would be crazy to shoot that down.
Yeah, absolutely. That baseline of knowledge is just so key to make sure that you're motivating the team in the right way. I think, on the backside of that, trying to understand how your team receives feedback is the other challenge on the backside of that. Is, hey, now I understand your drivers, but how do I actually continue to motivate you? Is it somebody that I can be very candid and straightforward with, or is it somebody I have to, sugarcoat things with a little bit more? So, good point.
Yeah, I love that.
Without a doubt.
Indeed. Well, Matt, so that's a great first point there. Like, understanding in depth, what motivates each individual employee. What are they trying to, succeed? What drives them in their life, and what are they trying to achieve? What else have you learned so far?
Number two, you set the pace for the rest of the team, right? The team will only run as fast as its leader. And if you're seeking as a leader 100% output, you need to give 110, 120. Where do you stop there? And I think the same could be said, back to always selling, is a thoughtful discovery in a selling environment helps pave the road to asking or gaining the right to ask a difficult question that gives you the insight to say, hey, this is a problem that's worth addressing, and this is how we can uniquely solve it as a seller. And I think there's an element of that with an employee. So what I mean by it is proving that you're willing to run 10 miles for them, and that you're a leader that's going to be on the front lines with them, right? So what I think would work to prove this is being on calls with reps, right? Like ride-alongs, listening to recorded calls, and giving feedback and scheduling purposeful time, right? Any manager outside of supporting reps might have, 15, 20 hours a week being spent with marketing, with sales operations, with onboarding, making sure processes are buttoned up. That's the managerial side, and with leadership and running forecasts. The other, half to 60% of the job is spent on calls with reps. So when we're thinking about, hey, that this is how we can articulate value differently or better than competition, pinpointing areas of opportunity on calls, and really showing that you're willing to spend the time and that you're present. That's another key takeaway from, hey, if I'm going to be on a call with a rep, there's 50 distractions that can go on in an hour demo. Is it, my VP messaging me? Is it marketing messaging me? We need to be physically and visibly present, if it's over Zoom, on calls with our reps and engaging and making poignant comments and asking the right questions along the way, to a certain extent, because this will segue at some point into my third point. But reps want to feel like you are engaged, and when you are giving feedback, that it's purposeful, that it has structure to it. And by doing that, I think that can set the tone or the pace for the rest of the team that, hey, I'm here with you in the trenches. I'm getting scrappy. I know exactly what you're up against, and I'm willing to take the tough at bats. I'm willing to take some punches on the chin. And I realize that's going to happen for you more often than it has for me from the customers. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And when an individual contributor can get that sense from a manager, I think it helps them understand that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall on my sword and be transparent enough to say, I need help in this area, or here's where I feel like it could have gone better. And that starts with you as a manager.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, as CEO of Gondola, but I'm also kind of a pseudo AE. I'm an SDR. I'll take out the trash. I'll do anything here. I will never expect anybody at my company to do things that I'm not willing to do or I'm capable of doing. I think about that a lot when we set our KPIs or metrics on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. If I can't hit it, how can I possibly expect someone else to? And if I'm not really in the trenches doing it, that's where the really nitty gritty of getting a goal accomplished is, because we all know, sales is really unpredictable. It's all over the place. And so just because something worked yesterday does not mean that it'll work today or next week or next quarter. And so keeping your finger on the pulse of each little individual day-to-day task and what's all going on, and the more you can get in the trenches and that your job opens that up, the better. And then you can really effectively set the pace and then justify that with what you've done. It's hey, I believe this should be the pace because I've done it here. And this is how I did it. And I can explain to you how I did it. And I'm here right with you. If you run into this problem or that problem, I'm right here to back you up. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a really, really important thing that, frankly, a lot of leaders don't do at times. And it's when I was being managed by others, it's one of the biggest frustrations I had. It's you're telling me to do this stuff, but you're not showing me how to get there. And that's a disconnect right now. So it's really not that effective.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think the confidence that you can bring in there too is interesting. It's I'm confident that it can be done because I've seen you do it. As a manager, not only showing them how to do it, but proving that it can be done is just another major key to that as well.
Certainly.
Without a doubt. Yeah, awesome takeaways.
Yeah. Well, cool, Matt. Well, I appreciate those first two bullet points. So why don't you take us home? What's number 3? I'm eager to hear it. What's their third kind of tip that you have for early stage managers?
So this wasn't in order of priority. As I'm looking at this one might be the most near and dear to me because I have to thought check myself pretty consistently. But the genesis of it is, if you were successful as an IC, as an individual contributor, it can be tempting to run your reps deals for them. And my advice to a first-time manager is this, right? The urge to win will likely never go away. There was a reason why an IC was successful, and ultimately what got them promoted was probably, hey, I was the number 1 rep, or I was top 10% of reps in my class. So part of what makes a great rep, in my opinion, is they thoroughly enjoy the process. And with that being said, it's very tempting to get engaged with prospects and have the urge to win a deal, because it's a dopamine hit. It has been for me. I feel like it is for a lot of sellers, and it's just it's fun to win. And I guess to get off that little bit of a tangent, what I challenge a first-time manager with is first, it's okay to set a good example, to Zach's point, by providing a successful call of your own that can prove it out. Hey, maybe in training, or maybe as you're ramping, there's a bit of sharing a successful call of your own or from another rep that, hey, this is what great looks like, and here's how you can replicate it and make it your own. And I think from then on, you're okay to contribute 2 cents during ride-alongs, or post for feedback, post call for a feedback piece. But let the rep take a stab and make a mistake, right? That's back to topic 2 is it's okay to fall on your sword. Like we do want any type of rep, whether it's SDR or AE, anyone in a sales function, to make mistakes and to feel comfortable doing so, because that's really the route to establishing a good foundation. And during post-call feedback session, what I'd recommend is pinpointing 2 to 3 positives. Hey, here's what you did great. I thought your agenda and your intro was very buttoned up. You had a very strong upfront agreement, and I think you did awesome at understanding a problem, and that's really what we want to get out of most of our calls. But here's 2 to 3 areas I'd like you to work on. I think we got to an overall problem, but did we spend enough time on that problem to where we've helped the prospect feel that pain so immensely that it's a problem that can't be ignored? And if we find gold, or if we find an inkling of gold, let's keep digging and get to the point where that gold becomes a gold mine. And that problem that we've helped the customer self-actualize is their reason for continuing to speak with us. And ideally, our solution is one that can uniquely address that problem. And when you're going about feedback sessions in this way and you're citing it, I think it helps resonate on the rep end. And that I'd say the biggest takeaway from all of that is it needs to be measurable and it needs to be consistently reinforced. The big learning of my own is I give the feedback, but I wouldn't necessarily follow up to that same point on the next feedback session. And I think it's really important for a first-time manager to maybe have a private scoring system and understand, hey, this is where the rep was on day 1 of the month or the quarter, and 45 days into the quarter, and at the end of a quarter, and see if those areas that you pinpointed are resonating with the rep, and if the meaningful strides are being taken to get them into the best spot that they can.
Oh, that's a great point. I mean, as a IC, we have such black and white measurability to our own success. Do we hit quota or not? Helping yourself gauge how effective you are at improving the skills and upskilling everybody on your team. I think that private report card that you're talking about is a great way for new reps and new managers to kind of jump in there and measure their success.
Nice. That's great. Yeah, I think one thing I'd say, just kind of wrapping up here, is the way I look at it is being aware of what's the downside, right? So as a manager, when you've done it really well and you're winning deals left and right, your inkling is to jump in and help them because you want to win everything, right? But sometimes, what is the downside of them messing up a discovery call? Well, maybe they go away. Maybe that buyer goes away. Maybe you're not set up as well for the demo on the next call, or whatever it might be. It's not. You can recover from that. It's okay. It's okay to let people fail sometimes if you know what the downside is and you're mitigating for that. So I think that's a really important thing. Let people fail at times. That's important. That's okay, assuming that you know what that downside is there and that you're planning for that. So, well, Matt, just to kind of summarize what we talked about here today. So if you are a first-time manager or looking for some tips on how to more effectively manage your team, we talked about 3 different things here today. So, first off, do deep discovery. Understand what drives your employees, what really motivates them, how do you communicate and give feedback effectively. But also, you are setting the pace for your team. You cannot expect people to be outperforming what you think or what your top pace is. You really have to. You are the barometer for what really great looks like and great work looks like. And you have to be the front runner and the leader there and set the example. And then last, but certainly not least, is don't jump in and save reps every single time. Sometimes you kind of got to let the little birdies fly and maybe flop a little bit, but it's good to get that critical feedback on the back half and refer to point A. Is just know what motivates them and how to get that feedback there. So, Matt, thank you so much for joining us here today. I really appreciate your feedback. Any other closing thoughts from anybody before we let everyone go today?
I think this is a great
This has been great.
Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you both for having me.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.